His gray fur speaks of fierce might, with blood-stained fangs that gleam in the night. Claws like soul reapers, tail swings death's song, feigns Buddhist ways, but his bloodlust stays strong. The gray wolf Guai of the temple was once an exile from the kingdom of Shirtua. When Shirtua was laid to ruin, the wolves fed, following the gray wolf on a long and weary road, until they found shelter under the banner of the Black Wind King. Unlike the old Lingxuzi, who pursued immortality and detachment, the gray wolf cared nothing for the ways of deities and Buddha, nor for the empty promises of eternal life. Instead, his heart was set on mastering strength and skill. He honed his craft with iron claws and fangs until he could strip the very flesh from the bones of his foes. When the old Lingxuzi vanished, Black Bear Guai saw fit to elevate the gray wolf to be the new master of the wolf Guais, giving him the name Lingxuzi and tasking him with guarding the Guanyin temple. The wolf Guais who came with the new Lingxuzi from the kingdom of Shirtua also rose in power and surpassed those who had served longer in the distribution of spoils and favors. The local wolf Guais had little affection for the ways of the new Lingxuzi, and after finding themselves thrust aside, bitterness took root in their hearts. In their shared sense of grievance, they found a new unity of purpose. Often they gathered in secret, comforting each other, sharing the old memories when the old master was in power, and quietly plotting against the new one. But Lingxuzi was prepared. Under the pretense of a roll call, he gathered the local wolf Guais in the temple and gave the signal to his loyal guards to seize the malcontents. The temple erupted into chaos. Lingxuzi then leaped down from the roof into the crowd, ready to devour all who dared to betray him. The Fireblade Wolf, hearing the commotion, rushed over and managed to hold Lingxuzi off and brought the minions time to flee to safety. When Black Wind King learned of this, he was ready to unleash punishment upon the rebellious wolf Guais. But the snake Guai mediated, and peace was restored. Yet from that day forth, the local wolf Guais refused to tread even within the shadow of the walls of Guanyin Temple. Smoke rises high from wood of fire. Hit the back, let the beats respire. As in mist, thunders conspire. After the case of the old Loong King of Jing River was settled, the Loong princes found themselves facing an uncertain future. Following the journey west, rewards were given based on merit, but only the Loong princes alone awaited judgment, heightening their anxiety. They sought out Yansoucheng and asked him for a sign of their fortunes. The signs showed the Loong lies hid, not a time for action, which became a thorn in their hearts. Among them, the most concerned were the four Loong who governed the four rivers and knew well the might of those above. They took the initiative to resign, hoping to save their lives by retreating. Yet, the letters they submitted to the Celestial Court were all returned. Time flew by, and one day Yansoucheng sought out the four Loong. He relayed that the signs had shifted to the Loong lies hid. It stirs in the deep, indicating a favorable time for action. Upon hearing this, the four Loong left their underwater abode and went their separate ways to plan their next moves. Red Loong was quite astute. Knowing that Black Bear Guai was greedy for treasures and had the protection of Guanyin, he bartered all his valuable possessions with Black Bear Guai in exchange for an ideal cave nestled in the mountains. Afterward, he went into seclusion in the cave and slept for many years. One day, he awoke and wanted to soar up the sky and stretch his body again, but he found that he could hardly climb the clouds. He remembered an ancient saying, "When a Loong wishes to ascend to the sky, it must first climb the clawwood." He wielded his thunderbolt tail to carve out a set of clawwood in the mountains to help him fly, but it was still to no avail. Red Loong was unwilling to accept defeat and sought help from Black Bear Guai. Although Black Bear Guai was not good at flying, he couldn't resist the chance for profit that presented itself. He sold the Bashan sensor he had brought from Guanyin's place to Red Loong, claiming that the sensor could create clouds and smoke. He cited a passage from ancient texts to persuade Red Loong. A Loong cannot traverse without clouds. Red Loong believed this to be true. He embedded the sensor on his back and burned his will to forcibly create smoke from it. When one sensor was not enough, he added another. Each time the sensors emitted smoke, they greatly consumed his will, yet the help they provided was very limited. Although Red Loong could use it to fly again, the flight could never compare to that of the old days. He could only reside wearily among the clawwoods. Alas, to think that the world harbors such vexing realities. A skill once mastered can fade with neglect. Such is the nature of all knowledge. If not applied, it withers away to nothing in the end. How lamentable! With empty hands, he preached, yet gold was his quest. He left no wealth, just doctrines to attest. A life of greed, his doom was sealed tight. If deeds were weighed, would he still face his plight? After 2 months of peace, Tang Monk reigned in his horse. He saw towers and halls nestled deep in the fold of the mountains. At the gate of the place, they saw that it was indeed a temple. The master and his disciple exchanged greetings before passing through the mountain gate. In the main hall, they saw the name of the place, Guanyin Temple. Tang Monk was overjoyed, but Monkey said, "Master, this is no good place. Better to leave soon." But the monk wouldn't listen. He knelt before every golden statue he saw in prayer, and the monkey, impatient with his master's attitude, began to strike the bell incessantly, startling all the monks in the temple. Those from the upper and lower halls all poured out. The monks greeted Tang Monk. Monkey used his see-through eyes to look around and laughed. "Why do you monks here look so sickly and weak, with your spirits drained? Have you broken the precepts?" In Tang Monk's perception, the monks all wore brand new kasayas and had tall, sturdy bodies. He considered Monkey's words to be mere nonsense and remarked, "Don't speak so recklessly." Then he turned to apologize to the monks. The monks themselves regarded Monkey's words as nonsense as well. Only 2 small monks, hidden in the crowd, dared not reveal themselves. The elder of the temple invited the master and disciple to the back chamber for tea. After the monks had taken their seats and the feast was laid out, the 2 small monks assisted the elderly monk inside. Tang Monk bowed respectfully. The 2 exchanged a few pleasantries, and Tang Monk inquired, "May I ask about your esteemed age, venerable elder?" The old monk replied, "Despite my many mistakes, I have lived to see my 270th year." When Monkey heard this, he laughed and said, "Old skinflint, why do I smell Yaoguai in this temple?" The old monk did not answer. Tang Monk hastened to interject, "This disciple of mine can be somewhat unruly at times. Please do not take offense." A small monk was just then using an exquisite vessel to pour 3 cups of fragrant tea for them. Monkey stared at him and said, "Where are you from, little monk?" The small monk set down the tea and swiftly hid behind the old monk. Biting his finger, he said, "This one has a furry face and a strange head. He's a bit scary." Tang Monk glanced at Monkey and said, "Mind your words. Don't offend people with your brashness." He then shifted the conversation by praising the tea and the vessels. The old monk didn't seem to mind. Instead, he asked Tang Monk, "Noble sir, hailing from the emperor's capital, might you have any treasures that you could lend me for a mere glimpse?" Tang Monk declined repeatedly, but Monkey laughed and said, "Master, isn't your kasaya itself a treasure? Why not allow him a glimpse?" All the monks laughed. Then they brought out 12 cases of kasayas, unfurled them, and hung them up for Tang Monk to see. But Monkey laughed and said, very well. Put them away. Bring ours out for a look too." Tang Monk grabbed Monkey and tried hard to stop him, but Monkey said, Do not fret. I know what I'm doing." Without more words, he took out the kasaya for the monks to see. As the old monk gazed upon such a wonder, his spirit was touched. He walked up to Tang Monk and knelt with tears in his eyes. "This humble monk is verily bereft of fortune. My eyes are dim and clouded. I cannot see it clearly." Monkey laughed again and said, "And how do you intend to inspect it clearly?" The old monk replied, "If you would be so kind and trusting, allow me to take it to the back chamber and study it carefully overnight. I shall return it to you tomorrow morning before your departure. May I know your thoughts on this?" Upon hearing this, Tang Monk was startled and chided Monkey. Monkey laughed and said, "What are you afraid of? Let him take it for a look. If anything goes wrong, I'll handle it. The future's dark. Destiny's winds may shift. Each rise and fall comes in its drift. Once a guardian of the southern sea, greed turned him to a slave of misery. Since his return from Guanyin, the Black Wind King's spirit brimmed with grand plans. He vowed to restore his might in the mountains. He knew well that after years away, to win respect from the Yaoguais, strength alone would not make them bow. So he took many steps to try to earn both awe and loyalty. When he was with Guanyin, he learned the mantra of revival. Harnessing the voluntary self-sacrifice of wolf Guais, he brought back old Lingxuzi from death. But that ungrateful old wolf left only a few words after the revival and vanished from his sight again. The Black Wind King feared the wolf pack would fall apart without a leader. He had to choose another wolf to head the pack. A gray wolf Guai who wandered here from Shirtua Ridge, strong and in his prime, was a fine choice. The Black Wind King gave him the name of Lingxuzi and helped him take the seat. Yet, the wolf pack rose against their new master in the temple, and it almost led to a bloodbath among kin. In his frustration, the Black Wind King used the mantra to try and bring back to life the old monk he used to practice with. But the soul of the monk did not return to the stitched corpse. Instead, it fused with the gold, silver, and copper coins the monk had buried in life, forming a maddened golem. It wandered and disturbed the mountain garrison day after day, never relenting. The newly appointed white-clad noble is far from ordinary. He typically indulges in solitary reading and poetry. Despite his outward appearance of loyalty and sincerity, he remains shrouded in mystery, making it impossible for others to fathom his true intentions. Alas, to think too highly of oneself and then end up achieving nothing. It is true that they say, a fool with ambition is worse than a nobody. In Guanyin's grove, his greed won't cease. Southern tides bring no release. Schemes cloud his sight. On Bodhi Peak, he learnt life's worth is peace. In the purple bamboo grove where Guanyin resided, life was usually tranquil. The black bear Guai spent his days eating bamboo shoots with Aster and drinking homemade bamboo leaf brew. His days had become so unremarkable, they almost faded into nothingness. One day, the Loong princess paid him a sudden visit with Red Boy, her servant. Flustered, the black bear hastily gathered his dishes, trying to hide the mess. The Loong princess rolled her eyes and asked, "Have you thought about the task Guanyin mentioned to you a few days ago?" Black Bear Guai didn't answer. He simply retrieved a box out of the chest and handed it to the Loong princess. Red Boy snatched it and opened it. Inside was a transparent, honey-fried sugar sculpture of an immortal riding a lion, known as a lion immortal candy. Yesterday, there was a Dharma assembly. At the top of the feast, there was this exquisite and eye-catching sugar sculpture. I specially saved it for you as a token of my respect. Do you presume to understand my tastes? Keep this for the children. Hearing this, Red Boy lost interest and stuffed the box back into Black Bear Guai's arms. Only then did the Loong princess let out a contemptuous laugh. Cognizant of his blunder, Black Bear Guai mumbled, "I'm willing to serve, but my abilities are mediocre. I'm afraid I can't handle such an important matter." The Loong princess replied, "Do you think we don't know that? Don't worry. There will be those fiercer and more ruthless than you leading the charge. No work, no reward. If it's a thorny matter, I might not be able to handle it. Guanyin will attend to all. No thorny matters shall prevail. Do not try to fool me. Guanyin instructed me to practice quietly here. Why would she intervene?" The Loong princess wore a long face and said, "How can you be so timid? This is a great opportunity. More people are vying for it than you could even imagine. Guanyin chose you only because she wanted someone she could trust. Can't you see that?" Black Bear Guai was speechless for a long time. The Loong princess had run out of patience. "So little ambition. Forget it. Forget it. I'll let Guanyin know." "Dear princess, honorable princess, That's not what I meant. I'll go." Only when she saw the eager look in Black Bear Guai's eyes did the princess roll her eyes again. Leaving Red Boy behind, she drifted away. Seeing her leave, Red Boy hastily asked Black Bear Guai, "What exactly is this task? I want to leave. Why don't you tell Guanyin and take me with you? It's a matter of great importance. But as you just heard, Guanyin didn't want you to go. Don't pester me anymore. I don't want to lose this opportunity for your sake." A few days later, Black Bear Guai had finished his preparations. Wielding a black-tasseled spear, he was about to set off. Red Boy, who had been waiting outside the bamboo grove for days, hurriedly caught up with him and once again insisted on accompanying him. Contrary to his usual manner, Black Bear Guai tried to persuade him, "Red Boy, Guanyin has instructed that you must stay here. Even your father has been pressed into service this time. Surely you can see how perilous it is. This is no laughing matter." He touched the encaging band around his head and sighed, "To risk one's life just to remove a headband? It's not worth it." With that, he transformed his body into a black wind and swiftly vanished, paying no heed to Red Boy's desperate shouts. Afterward, Red Boy waited for him outside the bamboo grove for a long time, but he never saw him return. Later, when Red Boy recalled, he realized that it was the last time he ever saw Black Bear Guai in Guanyin's place. Majestic and grand, with a fierce display, striped coat, eyes like lightning's ray. In the blood pool, its wrath does rise. With a bronze head and iron tail, it terrifies. The tale began centuries past, when the journeyers crossed Yellow Wind Ridge. In those days, the old tiger Vanguard lost his life seizing the Tung Monk. He left behind 2 sons who, once orphaned, had to fend for themselves. The mountain groves lay in ruins. The Tiger brothers led the remaining lesser Guais in a bitter struggle for survival. Fortunately, their father had taught them enough to make a living. As the sandstorms ebbed, rock Guais slowly restored the groves to their former state. The elder tiger, following his late father's ways, governed the Yaoguais in the mountain. Each knew their place and dared not prowl forth to prey on the living. Later, mortals drawn by the lush peaks and clear springs built a village amid the slopes. The elder tiger gained renown as a deity in the mountain with the principle, "Devour the evil and shield the good." The villagers built a crouching tiger temple for the brothers, offering rich tributes that made their lives even more blissful. Yet long had the younger nursed a grievance. His elder brother reaped all the glory in people's words on the tigers in the mountain. He believed his brother earned this merely by dint of a few more years of life. Another century turned and Yellow Wind Sage returned to Yellow Wind Ridge with a host of rat Guais. The younger tiger declared that it was the sage's negligence that had doomed their father. He clamored to slay the sage in vengeance, urging his brother to drive off the rats. Deeming this just, the elder agreed. But in that fight, the sage unleashed a vessel like a bodhisattva's severed head, with its gale sharp as an edge. In a single clash, the younger tiger fell grievously wounded. For the life of his little brother, the elder tiger at once cast down his arms and knelt in surrender. The sage held no grudge after learning the brother's origin. He even bestowed upon the surrender the title of Vanguard. When the younger tiger woke and learned his brother now served as the Vanguard, he seethed in disbelief. The brothers quarreled bitterly until the younger stormed off, severing all ties with the only family he had left. In the tiger Vanguard's eyes, that yellow-furred rat had twice destroyed his family and left them broken and scattered. He hated him for that, but he was no fool. As long as the rat had protection from the higher ones, what more could a tiger do beyond venting his rage by devouring a few lesser rats each day? Stone forms the mountain's bones, firm and true, Earth's essence, prized for all it can imbue. Its back bears towering rocks, reaching the sky, lofty in stature and majestic in height. Ever since the Yellow Wind Sage bestowed the Buddha-headed stone Guai's essence upon the 2 mountain deities, they consumed it and gained human hearts and forms. The union of the 2 resulted in the birth of a stone child. Thus, the Yaoguais referred to them as Father of Stones, the Mother of Stones, and Son of Stones. Later, the Father of Stones left the mountain for some reason, and the Son of Stones went in search of him, leaving the Mother alone. The Mother of Stone was never fond of violence. When the Yellow Wind Sage gave her the essence, he entrusted her with the task of diligently taking care of the mountain's inhabitants. She took this responsibility seriously and worked hard. When the journeyers passed through Yellow Wind Ridge, the Yellow Wind King captured Tang Monk, forcing Sun Wukong to seek Bodhisattva Lingji's help to capture him and take him back to Mount Lingshan. Years passed, and upon the return of the sage, the ridge was populated with many stone Guais. Among them was a particularly strong and robust stone Guai, which he learned was created by the Mother of Stone with all her might to guard the cave. One day, the Yellow Wind Sage personally came to visit Mother of Stone, only to be blocked by the stone Guai. Alarmed by their disobedience, he feared it might become a threat. Hence, he summoned the newly appointed Tiger Vanguard to eliminate the strong stone Guai. Tiger Vanguard agreed but was reluctant to fight them. They had once worked together to rebuild the mountain, and he knew the strong stone Guai was highly respected by the other stone Guais, who saw him as an elder brother. He advised the stone Guai, "Brother, we've endured much to reach this point. If I can help, I will. I've arranged everything. You just need to retreat into the valley and keep a guard on Shigandang. No need for anything vicious. Today I come with kind words, but tomorrow it might be a battle. Though we have some skills, we are no match for the yellow-furred rat. Why not join me as a vanguard and keep things as they are?" The next day, the Yellow Wind Sage appointed the strong stone Guai as stone vanguard, ordering him to lead the stone Guais to retreat and guard the valley. From then on, the stone Guais dutifully guarded the sealed evil being and no longer meddled in the mountain's affairs. In the sea of bitterness, harsh winds bring the tide. Only those favored one can reach the other side. The fragrance of rained soil spreads far and wide, yet dustless is the realm where the Buddhas reside. Years ago, upon Yellow Wind Ridge, several cliff stones drank deeply of the essence of sky and earth, basking in the energy of sun and moon. In time, they awakened, transforming into sentient stone Guais. Among them, two, through advanced cultivation, were bestowed with the title of mountain deities. One day, for reasons unknown, several Buddha heads emerged from the ground on the ridge. These heads, complete with eyes, ears, mouths, noses, and even flexible muscles, were profoundly bizarre. Upon seeing any living creature, they would scream loudly, and if approached, they would swallow the creature whole. One stone Guai, finding these Buddha heads strange and dangerous, decided to eliminate them to protect the mountain's inhabitants. It rammed into one of the Buddha heads, crushing it into a pulp. However, the flesh adhered to the stone Guai's body and soon grew into a new stone Buddha head. From that moment on, the stone Guai's temperament completely changed. It began to roam the mountain, searching for other Buddha heads, crushing them, and allowing them to grow on its back. As the number of Buddha heads on its body increased, so did its size. It no longer took nourishment from the universe, but instead fed on the mountain's living creatures to cultivate. The other stone Guais could not defeat it. A single punch from it would shatter them into pieces, destroying their souls. When the yellow-furred rat and his followers left the kingdom of flowing sands and passed through Yellow Wind Ridge, they encountered the mountain deities leading several stone Guais to drive the infested stone Guai away. The yellow-furred rat seemed to understand the nature of those Buddha heads well. A strong sense of righteousness led him and his followers into battle. In a great victory, the yellow-furred rat not only destroyed the infested stone Guai, but also eradicated all the flesh Buddha heads in the mountain. He extracted the essence from the Guai and divided it between the two brave mountain deities. He also gouged out the eyeballs from the Buddha heads and placed them in the valley as a seal. The mountain's inhabitants greatly admired the Yellow Wind Guai. Seeing that he could summon the wind, they named him the Yellow Wind Sage and revered him as their king, settling with him in Yellow Wind Ridge. With iron whiskers and devouring lips, twin hammers held in fierce embrace, Lightning sparks powerful force. In thunder's roar, he holds his place. Long had the fisherman beside the river Ji spoken of a black Loong, dwelling far beneath the waters in the 9 depths. Upon its neck rested a pearl of wisdom, said to grant great enlightenment to any who held it, a prize beyond the worth of gold. Many had braved the depths to find this fabled gem, yet few had been fortunate enough to return. With bitter tears, they told of the perils below, of returning with nothing to show for their trials, and worse, of facing the wrath of the fearsome Loong prince. Armed with twin hammers that summoned forth the fury of thunder, the prince could smite those before him, leaving nothing but dust. Long ages passed, yet still there were those who sought the pearl. Among the people, it was whispered that when the river Ji burst its banks and the waters rose in wrathful flood, it was surely the doing of the Loong prince, his wrath roused by the trespasses of those who sought his treasure. In hopes of appeasing him, they built a grand and splendid temple, where they offered worship and tribute to the Lord of the watery depths. Then came a day when a young man arrived, clad in a midnight hue, with a necklace of moon-pale stones around his neck. He named himself a master thief with skills beyond compare. Though all cautioned him against earning the Loong prince's wrath, he paid no heed. With a single swift dive, he set his course for the Loong palace. To his surprise, he found the palace strangely silent and empty, with no sign of the soldiers he had expected. A heavy sense of desolation hung in the air. Puzzled, he went to seek the sea treasury and saw a sturdy, tawny-skinned man sitting amid piles of chests, his brow furrowed in worry. At the sound of his approach, that man, who turned out to be the Loong prince, stirred, dug a string of pearls from a chest, and tossed them on the ground. "The pearl of wisdom you seek is not mine to give," he said in a weary voice. "Take these if you must and go." Surprised, the young man asked, "The people on shore spoke of your fierce temper, of how you strike men with your thunder or flood entire lands for the smallest slight." The Loong prince shook his head. "The flesh of mortals holds no savor for me. Think you that I am some petty Yaoguai to wreak havoc at my own whim? No, I would not dare to call forth the smallest storm save at the bidding of those higher. Idle talk, all of it. My own sire was condemned to the bite of steel for one trifling error. We Loong, though our hearts are true as any, are treated with such injustice." The young man said, "I have heard of the Loong King's plight, a grievous injustice indeed. Is it for his sake that you find yourself in such reduced circumstances?" Seeing he was no mortal, the Loong prince said, "Precisely. I have no wish to meet my end upon the Loong slaying terrace. I asked a fortune-teller, and he said if I hide well and kill some westbound monkey, I may yet atone for my misdeeds and restore my honor." The young man pondered this. "A fortune-teller, you say? It was the words of a fortune-teller that led me to this place. There might be some strange design at work in this meeting of ours. Why not go with me to where I come from? It just so happens to be on the very road that leads to the west." The Loong prince was overjoyed, but the young man added, "I ask no small price, however. All the treasures in your hoard, they must be mine." Since the day of the young man's arrival, fewer and fewer were those who sought to plumb the river's depths in search of the pearl. Later on, the tools of their quests were one by one set aside, and in time, the tales of the Loong prince far below and the pearl of wisdom he guarded were no longer spoken of. Armored strong, with horns that rise, burrowing brings endless human cries. A Buddha's head, yet ominous it seems, one side a saint, the other a fiend. The kingdom of flowing sands, abundant with gold, marked the sun's daily demise. The sun, truest of fires, plunged into the western seas, and the waters boiled and hissed at its touch. Each dusk as the evening bell tolled, the king sent men to the ramparts, where they beat upon a great drum and sound clarion calls, thus neutralizing the noise of the seas, which would otherwise be sharp enough to ravage babies in their cradles. This drum, known as the drum of the setting sun, was a gift from the Buddha and granted peace to the common folk. In gratitude, they filled their land with golden statues of all those enlightened, and the place came to be known as the Buddhist land of gold. Yet, as the years passed, the people's reverence for the Buddha grew to overshadow their regard for their secular ruler. This did not sit well with the king of the flowing sands. The chancellor, sensing his displeasure, petitioned for an end to Buddhism. And so the king decreed the razing of temples, the banishment of monks, and even the change of the kingdom's name. Not long after, at dusk when the great drum was struck, a monstrous insect erupted from the earth beyond the border. With terrible might, it ravaged the humble villages, leaving untold dead in its wake. From then on, the sound of the drum unfailingly drew the Yaoguai from its den to wreak new ruin. The people declared this to be karmic retribution, the result of the king's impiety. The chastened king halted his suppression of the Buddhist faith and sent armies to slay the creature. Yet what hope had mortal men to prevail against a foe so mighty and dreadful? After a bitter struggle, they could only manage to frighten it back to its lair. Fortunately, there was an enlightened monk, yellow of hair and garb, passing through the land. This righteous soul could not bear to witness woe and injustice and aided the armies in slaying the wicked insect. In gratitude, the king honored him with the title of royal sage, and the monk resided in the kingdom for several years at a time. The royal sage took his leave and resumed his wanderings. Word came that a bodhisattva, well pleased by his worthy deed, had taken him as a disciple. He then founded his temple in Yellow Wind Ridge. "See how the world favors virtue," the king often remarked. Endless yellow winds, sands stretch afar. In the land once abundant, no homes there are. Half Guai, half immortal, who can decide? Thief or sage, why would he mind? Firelight flickered over a table laden with food and drink. The second prince of flowing sands, sitting on the table, gnawed on what might have been half a haunch with relish. The king of flowing sands sat beside his son obediently. As someone who typically delighted in pointing out the missteps of others, he remained oddly silent during the feast. Even the tiger Vanguard was on his best behavior. Watching the dimwit across from him gorging on the haunch, the tiger seemed to have no appetite. The yellow wind sage sat in the place of honor, one hand caressing the object resting on the table, the head of a bodhisattva with eyes closed in silence. "Pa, I need more." The sudden shout from the second prince set all hearts hammering. His pa, the king of flowing sands, glowered and hissed, "Shut it." Then he scrambled to his knees and pleaded for forgiveness. "A trifle is all." The yellow wind sage rested his hand atop the head of Lingxuzi, then stood. "With my master's most prized vessel in my grasp, I can surely absorb that thing. I mean to enter secluded meditation, starting today. I have appeased those old rascals from above, yet it will be wise to remain discreet. If you're seeking seclusion, master," fawned the king of flowing sands, "my people and I would be honored to camp outside the cave and stand guard beside you." "Beside me?" The sage gazed at his master's head and rejected his offer immediately. "No, you will move to the ridge. I will be setting the yellow wind formation. Let no one disturb me. If there is urgent news, master, how shall we bear it unto you?" The king cried out. The yellow wind pointed at the tiger Vanguard. "Have your rock brothers raise paths of sand, each with a gate locked by a secret tally. You two vanguards will each hold a tally." Before Tiger Vanguard knelt to thank the sage for this weighty charge, the king interjected anxiously, "But master, we rats have never got along with those cats. If they hold the yellow wind sage didn't want to listen at all. He picked up the Buddha head and interrupted, "All of you withdraw. Do not disturb me until the very sky collapses." Halfway to the west, the journey long, returning to the homeland, where dreams belong. Strengthened and weakened by the mighty sack, principles falter on a misguided track. Kang-Jin Loong, one of the 28 constellations, is the second constellation of the Azure Loong of the East. With a sharp horn on her forehead, she once drilled through the gold symbols to rescue the great sage. Since then, the The constellation officers have upheld the principle of staying sharp, leading many immortals to believe that some strange influence had invaded their consciousness. One day, during the roll call in the Dome of Stars, the Dawn Star was missing. Despite thorough inquiries, no one knew his whereabouts. Coincidentally, Yellowbrow returned to the New West to host a grand ceremony, inviting various Yaoguais, gods, immortals, and Buddhas to attend. Hearing the news, Kang-Jin Loong sought permission from the Celestial Court and attended the ceremony, intending to secretly investigate the Dawn Star's disappearance. However, like the Dawn Star, Kang-Jin Loong also vanished without a trace. The constellation officers speculated and compared notes, realizing that both the Dawn Star and Kang-Jin Loong had once done the Great Sage big favors. They suspected a connection with the Great Sage. Reflecting on their past interactions with the Great Sage, they grew fearful. Koimu Wolf scoffed. Though that monkey ruined my plans, I still respect him. But you all, who always boasted about your friendship with that monkey, why are you silent now? Long Maiden Kang-Jin Fair, White Horns by Emerald Sea. Ambition beyond mortal care, grace unmatched, wild and free. Black and white entwine, old friends hard to find. Under wind's blade and frost's cold blow, she dances still in swirling snow. Despite Kang-Jin Loong's long wait, no constellation officer defended to her aid. Yellowbrow laughed. You, young lady, your high opinion of yourself is precisely why you've ended up like this, an utter loser. Kang-Jin Loong replied, as long as I haven't begged for mercy, winning or losing is irrelevant. Not antagonized, Yellowbrow said calmly, you wouldn't take such a risk just for that lookout cockerel. You must be curious about that monkey. Kang-Jin Loong remained silent. I do have something of that monkey's, right here in this sack. With that, he untied a sack from his waist. Kang-Jin Loong recognized it as the sack that had once captured them and scoffed. What's so special about it? It's not like I haven't been in it before. Well, if you really want to know about him, you'll have to see for yourself. With that, Kang-Jin Loong was sucked into the sack. As she entered the sack, she seemed to see a 10-tailed goldfish swimming towards her. Not long after, when Yellowbrow released her, the constellation officer had become dazed and bewildered. Seeing this, Yellowbrow laughed heartily. Well, is he still the hero you remember? Kang-Jin Loong asked. Is he, along with all the gods and Buddhas in the celestial realm, all like this? Yellowbrow neither confirmed nor denied it. After a long while, Kang-Jin Loong suddenly knelt on the ground and uttered, Please, Master, accept me as your disciple. The voice enlightens all. For pride and wisdom, you lost your debate. In ecstasy beyond measure, your true self is complete. The waves of Dharma, flooding, engulfing, overwhelming. Your mindfulness is lost in the world of evil. You question the sky, the earth, and Buddha. One wrong step and every step thereafter repeats. Here the winner loses, the losers win. The risen falls, the fallen rises. You know how to save the lost in evil's heartbeat. May your body serve this land since the teachings of golden form shrouds all beings in their deceit. With a sharp sword, Long Light it is called, fishing alone in the bitterness, nothing caught. The hidden Long waits to soar the sky, in fallen to the dust, its fame will fly. The boundless bitter lake, the Buddha's ferry saves only the willing. Without the willingness, nothing can be done. Cyan Loong, fishing alone on Turtle General's back, is one such case. When Cyan Loong arrived in the New West seeking refuge, he briefly encountered Yellowbrow. Disliking Yellowbrow's teachings on the path to bliss, which he deemed utter nonsense, he knew better than to offend him if he wished to stay in his domain. Thus, he claimed his intention to fish in the bitter lake. If he could catch a living thing, it would signify his bond with ultimate bliss, granting him the right to remain in the blessed land undisturbed. Yellowbrow knew this was merely a stalling tactic but found the idea amusing and agreed to it, with one condition. Once the fishing rod was cast, it could not be moved, so as the fisher. If he moves, it would prove that Cyan Loong had ulterior motives and was deceitful, and he would be immediately captured and sent to the dungeon. Cyan Loong readily agreed and kept his word. He transformed his long light sword into a hookless fishing rod, sat on the turtle's back, and did not move again. Every day, the lesser Guais would come to the turtle's back to check on him, expecting that he would not last long in the cold and hunger. But each time they came, they only saw the snow accumulating thicker and thicker on his body until it completely covered him. The Guais could not understand why he would endure such hardship when a simple bow, or a bit of minor contribution to Yellowbrow, could earn him a comfortable life. There truly are people in this world who would rather endure 1,000 hardships than abandon their lofty aspirations. They carry a world of their own in their hearts, unmoved by their circumstances. Indulging in desires, I am carefree, no fears, no sorrows, just pure glee. In land of bliss, at the 8 precepts, I laugh with delight. Inherent nature blooms, a tower of light. In the west, on the peak of Mount Lingshan, 2 men sat facing each other. Clouds billowed and the air crackled with tension. The young monk looked up at the sky, then pressed his palms together and bowed to another monk with brows yellow. Our masters are all here, brother. Are you ready? The Yellowbrow monk smiled and returned the bow. I have been ready for some time. The Ulambana assembly, held once every 500 years, had come to the stage of debate for graduating disciples. The young monk raised a hand, signaling his brother to ask the first question. Tell me, brother, said the Yellowbrow monk, what is the meaning of life? To seek truth, replied the young monk. And what is truth? The way all things move, the primary law of the universe. The Yellowbrow monk said nothing but brought out a flower. Its petals, first drooping, gradually unfurled in glorious bloom. Gazing at the flower, he said, observe it. By following its nature, it undergoes such wondrous changes. He then gently sniffed the flower and said, every flower that blooms releases a unique fragrance. This is the essence of its life, bursting forth for its own propagation. He let go, and the flower drifted away. To feel such a moment to the fullest, that is bliss. The young monk shook his head. A moment's pleasure leads to an eternity of pain. One will be trapped in the cycle, never at peace. The Yellowbrow monk said, on my recent journey down the mountain, I saw parents who, driven by hunger, exchanged their children for food. I saw dissolute sons of wealthy families who, consumed by lust, brought ruin to the moral order. The young monk frowned, looking at his senior brother. The Yellowbrow monk continued, I saw learned scholars who, craving glory, suppressed the dissents. I saw great generals who, thirsting for gain, massacred entire clans. The young monk remained unshaken. He said evenly, brother, do you not see? Those parents who traded their child for a meal will regret it all their lives. Those dissolute sons, living without restraint, died in an instant with their joy. The scholars who suppressed dissent, once they fell from power, were reviled by all. The generals who loved slaughter, they could never rest easy, undone by their own sins. The Yellowbrow monk retorted, nonsense. The young monk was slightly taken aback. Nonsense. Their struggle, their joy, their determination, and their pleasure, their endless cycle of sorrow and ecstasy never ceased and never sated, said the Yellowbrow monk. And this is the very source of the boundless vitality across the 3 realms. How then should it not be the true meaning of all life? And those who set themselves up as false idols, given time, their pretensions are always unmasked. They become a joke in nursery rhymes and a laughingstock in the pages of history. Brother, why do you praise the suffering of karmic cycles, as you spurn the truth of liberation and enlightenment? The Yellowbrow monk said, brother, without joy and sorrow, what is there to enlighten? The young monk said, where lies enlightenment? It is but suffering, plain and clear. The Yellowbrow monk bellowed, In pain, one finds revel, and in revel, pain. Without both, there is no redemption. Once she rode the cloud chariot to the high terrace. Now she dwells in a secluded cave by the mountain base. The breeze by the frail bridge chills her delicate frame. Spring arrives, another bridal gown newly made. Upon reaching a cluster of huts in the forest, Tang Monk decided to seek alms for food. As he approached the village, he saw several women playing with balls under a pavilion. Invited by them into their home, he was suddenly thrown to the ground, tied up with ropes, and hung from a beam in the most uncomfortable manner. While climbing trees and branches, Wukong turned back and saw a glimmer of light, realizing that his master must have encountered Yaoguais. He summoned the local keeper for details and learned that the glimmer was from the celestial bathing spring, which had been taken over by 7 spider Guais. Knowing that they bathed 3 times a day, Wukong transformed into an eagle, swooped down, and stole all of their clothes from the rack. Ba Jie, seeing so many women's clothes, persistently inquired and learned that 7 Guais were bathing. Overjoyed, he rushed to the spring. Without any hesitation, he stripped off his black garb and jumped into the water, transforming into a catfish Guai. The spiders tried to catch him, yet none of them succeeded. Recognizing one of them as an old acquaintance, Ba Jie mischievously swam around her legs. He floated and dived around her until he was out of breath and hazed. The Guais, retreating to their cave, fetched some old clothes and called upon their 7 adopted sons to guard the house while they headed to the Temple of Yellow Flowers to seek aid. Meanwhile, Ba Jie retraced his steps and reunited with the Fellowship. Together, they defeated the insect sons and freed their master. Without delay, they hurried to the Temple of Yellow Flowers. The temple master, who had practiced alongside the 7 spider Guais, learned that Tang Monk was a monk of 10 lifetimes merits and that his fellow spiders were humiliated, prepared 4 cups of poison tea, intending to exact revenge on the Fellowship and ultimately consume Tang Monk. However, Wukong saw through the ruse, overturned the teacups, and defeated the spider Guais, forcing them to retreat. The Daoist master then engaged, prompting Wukong to order Ba Jie to eliminate the 7 spider Guais in his stead. Following his command, Ba Jie wielded his rake and struck down each of the spiders, sparing only the last one. Remembering their brief affair in the water, he hesitated and, with a final thrust of his rake into the ground, told her to flee for her life. In robes concealed, Loong lies, trapped within the currents of life's ties. Soaring high, golden lining arise, fate's trials from which none can hide. The plan he had was simple. Since the old man could foresee destiny, he would surely sidestep misfortune. By staying with him, he believed he could elude all danger. After his brothers each fled to distant realms, he transformed into a Loong pattern on Yunsocheng robe. For the next 100 years, he followed the old man across the vast lands, watching him decipher omens and foretell futures. But what good did his words change? Most, in their hubris, fell into the same snares. Whenever this occurred, the old man would seek refuge in drink. By fortune's grace, he possessed a gourd that brewed its own wine, and thus, he often drowned his sorrows in a self-spun stupor. In his drunken haze, the old man would often converse with the shadows. At times, he would mutter wistfully, "What use is it to see through the game if you cannot play it? And if you do not enter the game, what is the use at all?" At other times, he would be spirited and cheerful, exclaiming, "With life and death both predetermined, so why not be bold and give it a try?" Occasionally, he would speak with a heavy heart. What's done shapes what's to come. How many can truly defy destiny? And sometimes, he would sigh and question, if you could predict where you would die and deliberately avoid it, could you really escape? The Loong often wondered if these words were meant for him. But since the old man never exposed or drove him away, he assumed the old man was just rambling in his drunkenness. As time went on, these words gnawed at his heart, leaving him torn and unable to decide whether to leave. In bounds of deity's abode, sorrow's wine I sip, golden armor, golden claws, poison's grip, cockerel's crow, blood tears, body near to break. My love wanes and waxes like the moon, yet burns eternal like the sun's embrace. The mountain of venom, neighboring the West Liang kingdom of women, inherited its tradition of female supremacy. The mountain was ruled by a scorpion queen, a Guai of desire, renowned for her enchanting beauty. She practiced the Tao of concentration, excelling in bedroom arts and matters of pleasure, thus having countless partners for her practice. Among these partners was a male scorpion, adorned in golden armor and claws, whose strong build earned him the queen's favor. Together, they had a brood of scorpion offspring. However, none of the offspring were female, which led her to lose interest in passing them her skills. Consequently, the golden-armored male scorpion also fell out of favor. Seeing that the queen no longer sought his company, the male scorpion, with high self-esteem, took his children and moved outside the mountain, severing ties with her. Later, when the journeyers passed through the kingdom of women, the scorpion queen, true to her nature as a Guai of desire, kidnapped Tang Monk, which cost her her life when Wukong summoned the Dawn Star, whose crow killed her instantly. Her maidens, the captives from the kingdom of women, held in her cave, dispersed, taking all the treasures with them. Still seething with anger, Wukong set the place ablaze, turning everything to ashes. Sensing the fire, the male scorpion outside the mountain rushed to the scene, only to find his former love stripped of her clothes, her tail severed, and her body reduced to a bloody pulp, dead at the foot of the slope. After much inquiry, he learned that it was the Dawn Star of Constellation Mao that had killed her. With this knowledge, he vowed to avenge her. Fortunately, the Guai of desire had imparted some techniques to him. He hence settled in the Pipa cave, rebuilding her force and dedicating himself to practice. However, being male, he struggled to achieve great success, leading to the decline of Mountain of Venom's reputation. Upon learning that Webbed Hollow was the premier place for insect Guais to practice, he took his sons and sought refuge there. A brief song stirs the valiant heart. Long crows pierce the night apart, leaping high, then falling low, drifting like duckweed in the flow. He lay on the ground, still unsure of how he had been defeated. The previously unremarkable Daoist-robed insect Guai, whom he had previously dismissed as insignificant, now stood before him with a smirk on this face. Seeing the Guai holding a radiant golden hairpin, he suddenly understood. He wanted to ask a question but found he couldn't speak. The pain was unbearable. It seemed that his throat was slit by the vile insect with the hairpin. He should be dying. He closed his eyes, not wanting his last sight to be that hideous face. Unexpectedly, someone turned him over and carefully applied decoction to his wound. He could breathe again, but this brought him no relief. The Guai clicked its tongue in amazement. The medicine master gave is truly remarkable. It has mended the severed part completely. What a pity to use it on this one. He opened his eyes and tried to ask a question, but the Guai stopped him. Don't rush. External medicine can't heal internal injuries. Besides, I don't intend to cure you. With that, the Guai waved its hand, and two fake Daoists in green robes carried over a jade box covered with brocade. The Guai took out a golden cocoon and said, "We mountain Guais are unworthy of this item. It's best to test it on you." Panic-stricken, he coughed up blood, which splattered onto the golden cocoon. The cocoon broke upon contact with the blood, and a worm with a human head and a golden body emerged, quickly squirmed into the grass and disappeared. The Guai remained unperturbed and pulled out another golden cocoon from the jade box. Master was truly wise to have prepared 2 golden cocoons. He tried to struggle, but his body was tightly bound by cobweb. The Guai commanded, "Pour it down his throat." The fake Daoists brought several buckets of water and forced his head back, pouring some foul-smelling concoction into his mouth. He felt something go down his throat. After swallowing it, he felt as if he were floating on clouds, his mind becoming hazy. Apart from a lingering concern for his mother, he could hardly remember anything. He silently recited one last prayer, hoping that a glimmer of survival would be bestowed upon his mother. Tending the furnace, stoking the flame, making pills, to immortality aspire. Countless eyes and countless schemes. One misstep and shatter all dreams. Will this work? Violet Spider lowered her head, not daring to look directly at hundred-eyed Daoist master. The master handed a needle to the old woman and said softly, "With what the monkey left behind and this vessel mine, you have nothing to worry about. If both fail, come to me and I will back you up." He paused as if a new thought had struck him and added, "If I act first, you will never see that pig again." Hearing this, the old woman quickly took the needle, thanked him and left. Once the door closed, an immortal with a red scalp and a crane face came in, holding a fly whisk. He emerged from behind the screen, looking at the master imposingly. The master bowed respectfully and reported, "With that pig in our hands, the destined one alone will not cause any trouble." The crane immortal remained non-committal and sighed, "Your little schemes are all under His Majesty's watchful eyes. He hasn't intervened out of respect for Her Majesty." The master chuckled dryly and replied, "Her Majesty's words, they've taken too much profit. This time, our principal and interest must be taken back." The crane immortal flicked his fly whisk as if shooing away flies and said leisurely, "Once it's done, you leave, but they still have to stay." No expression could be seen on the master's face as he bowed deeply to the immortal. Blacking fish, white young fish, stirring storms with a sky-flipping swish. Leaping, twirling, never at rest, boundless power in a bowl compressed. In the South Sea, there is a fish over 6 meters long. Its dorsal fin resembles a blade and can change color at will, whether white or black. This fish can fly into the sky, creating massive winds and waves as tall as mountains. Each time this fish appears, the village suffers from a plague. Once, a fisherman returning from his catch encountered an elderly man who could barely walk. Despite his frailty, the old man carried a heavy, tattered bundle filled with scrolls. Exhausted and without money to pay for a boat ride, he struggled along the riverbank. The kind-hearted fisherman, seeing the old man's plight, offered him a free ride across the river and even gave him 2 fresh fish for a meal. Grateful, the old man performed a divination on the spot and said, "In a few days, a young man wearing a bamboo hat and a white robe will pass by. Under no circumstances should you let him come to your village. On the day he arrives, do not conduct any business on the river, or you will lose your life." After delivering these cryptic words, the old man vanished from the boat, leaving the fisherman both astonished and frightened. Yet, he etched the old man's warning deep into his heart. A few days later, while fishing, he indeed saw a man on the riverbank who matched the old man's description exactly. The man, claiming to be weary from his travels, asked the fisherman if he could take him to the nearby fishing village to rest. The fisherman initially wanted to refuse, but then decided to take the man to a neighboring village downstream instead. After dropping the man off, the fisherman docked his boat and dared not return to the river. At that moment, the man pulled a black bowl from his sleeve and threw it into the river. As soon as the bowl hit the water, a massive pitch-black fish emerged, and a fierce storm erupted, with waves surging sky-high. The fisherman fled without looking back. Some time later, he heard that a severe plague had struck the neighboring village, killing many people. Initially feeling a sense of relief, he soon learned that refugees from the neighboring village had brought the plague to his own village, and they too were not spared. With auspicious purple skin, a majestic sight, mighty and fierce, like a tiger in fight. Ice and fire clash, a battle so dire, in scorching hills and frigid lands, a path of mire. The Bull King sat on the mountaintop, utterly exhausted and unable to move. He watched as the Bishiu beast limped away from the battlefield. He thought about calling out to it but decided against it. His longest-serving mount had been heartlessly driven away by him, without even a backward glance. His most trusted weapon had been taken by his own son and discarded who knows where. The Bull King glanced at the bloodstains on his body. His old wounds had not yet healed, and now there were new ones. That brat's firepoint skills had improved again. Initially, when the boy learned of his origins, he clamored for revenge every day. Fearing that his son would bring about his own demise, the Bull King had locked him up for a while and assigned the beastly beast to guard him. Unexpectedly, Red Boy managed to escape, and by the time the Bull King arrived, the beast had chased and fought him for quite a while, leaving the boy pinned under its claws, barely alive. It was the beast's fault for being so ruthless, forcing him to severely injure it to save his son. What was wrong with that? Fortunately, he had held back enough to let the reckless beast keep its life. But who would have thought that the brat's injuries were faked? Now the tables had turned, and the son had imprisoned the father. Retribution, it seems, does not come from the karma but from the hearts of men. The one who wanted to save you, you drove away. The one who wanted to kill you, you saved? A familiar voice echoed from the depths. Yes, you can save me, and I can save you too. But who will save us? The Bull King's head began to ache again. On his red skin, talent may shine, eyes glaring bright, a mischievous sign. Samadhi fire forged, yet heart unrefined. The gate to Mount Lingshan lies within the mind. For many years, Red Boy had been having the same nightmare. In his childhood, he shared this nightmare with his mother. Mother, there were so many people. They were all coming to kill me. My dear, once you fall asleep again, you'll forget all about it by tomorrow. Yet the boy was excited. But I am very powerful. I defeated monks as tall as mountains, strange birds, and fire-breathing statues. I am not afraid of them at all. Oh, how brave you are, my dear, he continued. I dreamt that I grew up into an adult, with long horns on my head and long spikes on my hands. I could kill a bunch of bad people at once. But there were too many of them, I couldn't kill them all. Later, some strange people I had never seen before came. They hung quietly in the sky, not coming down, just silently watching me from above. His mother pulled him into her arms. If that day ever comes, your father and I will go to the sky with you and kill them all. Will we die? I dreamt that they killed me, and I turned into a red lotus flower. And mother, you picked this lotus flower, and I became your child again. He continued to chatter. Mother, if I die, would you be willing to give birth to me again? Don't you ever say this again. Fangs bared, eyes like twin lanterns bright. Indiana battles clash, he finds delight. Agile and brave, with skills so fine, yet lost and wandering, his fates decline. The raging flames had reached the Golden Hall, and the sounds of battle outside were deafening, though they were muffled within. The king, gravely wounded, sat amidst the wreckage, holding a recently deceased young boy in his arms. A figure stood behind the curtain, sighing, such devastation, don't you see? It's all because of you. The king remained silent. Whether the Yaksha royal lineage continues or ends depends entirely on your decision today. The king couldn't help but glance around the Golden Hall, still able to see traces of its former glory. They say Yakshas are the most resolute, yet you, as their king, are hesitant and indecisive. The king gently stroked his son's face, the body still warm. He wished so dearly that the boy could see the vast and beautiful world. If you have even a shred of lingered desire, why not try my method? The unattainable wish in your heart, I will take care of it for you. As a king, was he not even allowed to die on the battlefield? The king closed his eyes. Finally, he opened them and said slowly, Since there is no salvation, I will leave me and my son at your disposal. Splendid. It's not too late to understand it now. The figure clapped, and a white-clad Daoist emerged from behind. The Daoist approached the Yaksha King, bowed, then sat cross-legged on the ground. He extended his hands above the boy's head and began to chant softly. Before long, a small, blood-red lotus flower emerged slowly from the boy's forehead, crystal clear and vibrant. The Daoist carefully plucked the lotus and placed it into a bowl he carried. The Yaksha King fixed his unblinking gaze intently at the lotus. The figure said, "This red lotus is the essence of your son's soul. To ensure it does not dissipate before successful reincarnation, we will need your life and the water from the river of childbearing." The Yaksha King raised his arm, taking one last look at the blood lotus. "I will do it myself." On stone peaks, a divine birth is found, yet its dual hearts keep wisdom bound. To shake the sky and earth seems light, but only with schemes known does fortune take flight. In Mount Huagua, after the birth of the sage stone monkey, the remaining celestial stone continued to absorb the essence of the sun and moon for 1,000 years. Through self-cultivation, it eventually transformed into a Yaoguai as large as a mountain. This celestial stone originally possessed boundless divine power. However, not long after its transformation, someone planted a fleshy Buddha head on it. Since the emergence of this fleshy Buddha head, it had constantly absorbed the will from the celestial stone's body. The celestial stone's spirit grew weary and had to burrow into the ground, absorbing the pure essence of the earth to replenish itself. Over time, it drained the surrounding mountains of their will, causing flowers to wither, leaves to fall, and all living beings to perish. Meanwhile, the fleshy Buddha head, nourished by the celestial stone, almost became the master of the stone body. Fully energized, it began to develop the skanda of consciousness within. If it were to complete the other 4 skandas, who knows how atrocious this celestial stone Guai would become. Alas, this celestial stone, nurtured by the universe, ended up serving as a mere vessel for the parasitic fleshy Buddha head. Perhaps this is what people often refer to as fate and destiny.